Right, it's something is happening. Okay, I think we are live on YouTube. Hey everyone, this is the Node tooling meeting for May 13th, 2022. I guess let's get to the agenda here.
Sounds good.
Sorry?
Go for it.
All right, yeah, so the first thing on the agenda actually is about regular failures in test fs rmdir recursive on Windows. I could have sworn we fixed that.
Good question.
I'm going to open up the issue here because maybe this is an old one or maybe a new one. Who knows? Oh, I see. We did make some fixes, and I don't think they fixed the issue. So this remains an open mystery. Okay, I didn't even realize that was still happening. So good to know, I guess. Yeah, like the last comment here on this issue is from Ben from February 21st. Okay. So I guess it does. He had a suggestion there of something we could do. Serializing those tests, even if that just makes it easier to figure out where the failure is happening. So that's kind of, I guess, the update on that. Like I said, I didn't realize that issue was still open, so I might see if I can take a look at that. Other than that, next on the list, we've got Recursive Reader, which is very exciting. I'm also not super up on what's going on with this. Has anyone else been following this recently?
Nope.
Let's see, there is a PR.
That's nice.
See if I can find it.
January 7th.
Yep, that's the one. Try to maybe share the link.
Sure. So share it in the chat here. A lot of conversation.
Yes.
I see Ben's in there.
Yeah, it seems like there's maybe one remaining issue I'm trying to resolve here. And I see some C++ code, so I have no idea what's going on there. Yeah, I mean, seems like this is close, but one kind of sticking point. I would really love to get this one in at some point. Not sure if there's anything we can do to help.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we can ask Ben when he gets back.
Sure.
I supposed to join at 15 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of this stuff is related to him, unfortunately. Like the next thing on the agenda is recursive copy. I don't know what the update is on that one either. It is in Node. I think it's still listed as experimental. I think that was probably why it's still on the agenda, just trying to get rid of that experimental status.
Well, and let me say, okay, I see something here. If we wanted to waste a little bit of time until Ben joins us, one thing I was thinking is Collab Summit. If we want to take a few minutes to talk about what we might want to do there. Or,
yeah.
There's issue 140. which has a link to a discussion. I guess maybe I should just here, let's share the link to the issue. And then this is the link to the discussion, which I don't know if the link to the discussion is really that helpful, but
oh yeah, there isn't really anything there. I agree though, if we all are going to be in Austin together, we should definitely do the tooling group session. What do we want to talk about though? Probably argument parsing would be my guess.
yeah. And then, I know we've talked in the past about, roadmap sort of thoughts. So that's certainly something. I wonder if we should have like, maybe a brief sort of enablement session for maybe anybody new coming to the space. If they're joining us, we could spend, a half hour or so talking about what we do, and if folks want to get involved. We could spend some time talking about argument parsing, maybe any other things that are sort of lingering, and then talk about future work.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, you had two good ideas there. I would say one, like anything we can do to get any new people interested would be great, I think. And then two, just talking about like, what do we want to do next? Because really a lot of our roadmap was like a bunch of the recursive file system stuff, argument parsing, a few things like that. And if we're hopefully close to wrapping up a lot of that stuff, what do we do next?
Okay.
Those are good ideas. Should we? I guess I started this issue in the tooling group. I can maybe make some notes here, like.
I've got something started. So I've got 3 points here: getting new people interested, current state of affairs, and what do we want to do next?
Yeah, I think that it probably wouldn't hurt to like recap, what we've done in the maybe last year, and then where we can go from there.
Sure.
Were you going to say something, Darcy?
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, we should also maybe redefine scope. What is the scope of this group? That's like a good like boundary or like setting for what we want to take on. So
okay, I'll add that. Include discussion on scope of the work.
I wanted to mention we can actually maybe have 2 different sessions. I know in the past I was working with Summit folks or previous conferences. I know like sometimes it's trouble to even like do the agenda for the summit. So maybe we can propose like 2 sessions. So one more like where we can introduce the group and like talk about the roadmap, and maybe a second one to kind of go more deep dive into the parsing, whatever we have in the agenda at that time.
Yeah. If we were, I'm looking at the list I got here: get new people interested, what we've done in the past year, current state of affairs, and then what do we want to do next? Include discussion of the scope of the work of this group. Discussion on scope. Okay. I mean, we could maybe split that into 2 or 3. There's really aren't constraints on how we want to approach this. So whatever we think makes sense. I could see like getting new people interested. What have we done in the past year? Current state of affairs. That could be kind of one session, maybe an hour or 2, whatever we think would be adequate. And then maybe like 2 hours for what do we want to do next? Do we want to slot in conversation about parse args, or should I just maybe current state of affairs includes that as the conversation?
Yeah, that could work. We could just cover that in current state of affairs, or have an informal session at the bar where we all just yell at each other about argument parsing for a couple hours.
That will happen regardless. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe that covers it.
Okay, so propose 2 sessions.
I think the way you like the new people, what have we done kind of thing does make sense as a as a separate session, and then road mapping or something we do
Mhm.
afterwards.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we could do 2 hours before lunch and 2 hours after kind of thing.
Also, how does this stuff get scheduled? Do we just decide when we're going to have the meetings?
It's a good question. I will have to work with Waleed to see what's taking shape. But as far as I know, there are some sessions proposed, but I don't think that we're maxed out on what they were expecting to have for Node. So
Okay, I think tentatively for me, it's looking like I'll be around all day Thursday for the Collaborators Summit, and only for a little bit in the morning on Friday.
okay, I'll say would prefer Thursday.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna say discussed in today's meeting. Okay, so I'm gonna comment there. Y'all can take a look at this issue.
Did you comment that on our issue or on the?
The tooling issue.
Oh, you shared. Yeah, you shared the link again. Okay, great.
Yeah. And then I can take the action item to take this to Waleed or propose it in the summit repo and go from there.
Great, that sounds good to me.
Cool. All right.
Yeah, that did not kill nearly enough time.
We're too efficient.
Yeah.
Cool.
Anyone
Anything else?
Anyone have any new stuff or fun announcements?
I don't, but one thing that comes to mind for me is I am a mentor in an internal like new contributors sort of sessions that we do kind of ongoing. And so I have a bunch of people that are interested in getting involved in Node. I always recommend folks to find like a group like this so that they can have some support in finding some issues and getting some guidance in the work. So I may be able to bring a couple of folks along to the tooling work in the coming weeks. We'll see.
That sounds good. Need to do that planning, find some new work.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Get some FS polyfills / variants that our team has been supporting for a while, which might be good candidates to look at and review if they actually make sense to pull back into core. I know MILF on my team has been basically maintaining this library for a while that I can share. And just like bringing this up as like potential to talk about in the future. Just find it. So some of these wrap essentially existing FS functionality. Primarily, I think it has to deal with like ownership. And a few nuances of what our own needs are with FS, but might be something in here that we can pull back in to core in the future. So yeah, just wanted to bring that up as potential like next work item.
Yeah, that seems like it's got some potential. I mean, that's kind of what we've done in the past as well, is just looked at what are some other popular things that people are doing in user land that we can pull back in. It's been a while.
Yeah, well, the test utility got like nerd sniped on us, I guess. Like we got Colin went ahead and did that work for us. So there you go.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, what's next on that list? Fetch got sorted as well.
I don't know. What do you want to see in what do you want to see in a standard lib that like is potentially not in Node core today?
Yeah, I'm trying to Just trying to think, what else am I usually pulling into projects? We have covered a lot of stuff over the last couple of years between us and other people. So, I mean, which is good to see.
For sure. That's great.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what else. Just improvements to NPM.
Yeah, it's definitely something to think about, I guess, before the collaborator summit. I might like poll my team at work, see if anyone's got any ideas.
It's a good idea. I see your NPM CLI roundtable issue too. I'm very interested in that.
Yeah, we've got some exciting stuff that we can share. I mean, we've obviously been working on a bunch of features which are aligned with like other package managers, like the isolated mode RFC, which has been like a year and a half in the making, and is collaboration with folks from Microsoft 365. So it'll probably be like coming up on like 2 years by the time we actually land it. But that's a different reification mode. Other than sort of the hoisted strategy, which we've traditionally supported. We also have like a legacy, like non-hoisted mode in NPM. But this sort of like, unlocks the same kind of capabilities like package managers like PNPM have, and Yarn v2 and 3, I think, have like configurable reification modes as well. So we're hoping to be able to demo that for folks at the conference, and then also we got a few other things that we've been working on. Command-specific configuration is one of the things we're speccing out right now, which we think is really, really kind of important, I think, going forward. It's been something we've been asked for a long time, and then also npm query actually is like this very large RFC that I've put together with the help of Roy and some other folks on our team. And it's probably a command you didn't know you need, but it's going to be, I think, really important going forward. Just getting insights out of like your dependencies, right? So come up with like using CSS as sort of like a baseline. Like we've come up with like a selector syntax that like feels very natural to write like a selector query and be able to then get dependencies back from what's inside your project, and then you can essentially iterate over those to do actions is kind of the hope. So yeah. We're hoping that we can potentially demo that by the conference, but I'm sure Roy is shaking in his boots because I think it's on his radar to pick up soon. So.
I'm very, very excited about the demo of isolated mode. Been waiting for that one.
Yeah, have you started to use the overrides yet?
Oh yeah, that was like the blocker for us switching to npm. Whereas now, like we actually a couple of weeks ago we had like the metrics like crossed where like yarn usage dropped and npm usage eclipsed it. So we're well on our way.
Yeah, we've seen that in our own metrics actually. At least for npm 8 is going to be the most popular package manager, we believe, by the end of like this quarter.
Yeah, that's been working pretty well for us, and just waiting on isolated mode now for those mono repos.
Yeah, and we can get rid of the meme that your node modules is the was that the most dense like matter in the universe or something?
Yeah.
I don't think there's like anything else, but we're hoping that a few folks are going to come to that working session if it gets approved, to have a npm collab summit session with some new ideas, because I know a few things have been flowing around in terms of like pipelines. Like I know Turbo Repo and Laga have like sort of introduced like the idea of like build dependencies, and that kind of was a thing in Lerna as well. So we're trying to support those types of use cases going forward as well. So yeah, just essentially trying to take what we're seeing as trends in the ecosystem and pulling that back into the core experience. So.
I am definitely very interested in all of those topics, so I will be there.
Yeah, we just need to get Blarn, I think, into core somehow.
I still gotta get that PR done. See if I can do that on the flight or something.
Yeah.
Doesn't look like Ian. Are you not in the OpenJS Foundation org?
Like on Slack or
No, on GitHub. Doesn't seem like it. You're not.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
Should I be? Is that?
You don't need to be. I'm just adding facilitators to the issue here, and you didn't come.
I mean, feel free to add me.
There goes your inbox.
Never, just never had occasion to be in there before. Okay, Ben is here.
Hello, Ben.
Hello.
We were just kind of talking about OpenJS World and the Collaborators Summit and some of that kind of stuff while we were waiting for you, because a lot of the agenda items are related to you. So
cool. Did you get a talk into OpenJS, Ian?
I am doing a virtual talk.
But you're going to be there?
I will be there, but I have to record a talk for the virtual track before I go there.
Well, that's convenient. That way you can heckle yourself.
Kind of. In some ways, I kind of just created a lot more work for myself.
Yeah.
But anyways.
It's soon, right? It's a month out? Right?
Yeah,
Yep.
less.
Yeah. I don't think I'm going to go.
Oh, no?
Well, maybe I'll come for the Collaborator Summit. When is there a Collaborator Summit with it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 2 days, which is something we've been talking about too. I'm about to create 2 session proposals for the tooling group. And what we had discussed while we were waiting for you is the first session would be like intro and get new people interested, look at what we've done in the past year, and then like sort of a current state of affairs, including like discuss parsargs or any other work that is currently active. And then the second session would be what do we want to do next? And as Darcy suggested, include discussion of the scope of the work of this group. But I know we've talked about sort of roadmap ideas as well. So that was sort of a future looking session.
Gotcha. Makes sense. Well, I guess we can jump into the agenda.
Yeah, I was going to say, now that you're here, the couple things that you were kind of the last person to comment on. We looked at some of these issues. One was around Recursive Reader. Any context you can share on that one?
Yes, I think that's the one where an external person was contributing to it, right? Let's take a look.
That was the one
notes open, actually.
Ethan was working on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it stalled a little bit just because I think they didn't have cycles to work on it. So it's like, I haven't looked in a few weeks though. Let's take a look.
Yeah, it seemed like there was maybe one kind of remaining issue in the discussion there.
Yeah, I think they've been really responsive. Like, I think they completely agree with what has to happen. Oh, it's sorry. There have been comments up to 7 days ago. The TLDR is the code's kind of challenging to work in. So I think that they're trying to figure out how to do an asynchronous implementation of the recursive reader logic, and having a little bit of trouble because you have to unravel 7 layers of indirection to make it work. Looks like Targos owes them a comment. It looks like it would be helpful maybe for us to ping Michael Zasso. I'm hopefully saying his name right. And maybe see if he could give some feedback. He's the last person flagged in the review. Or if anyone else wants to dive in and help.
Okay, that sounds good. And then the other thing on the agenda here, I don't know if there's any updates on this. Just it's on the agenda. Recursive copy. I think that was still on the agenda just because it's still listed as experimental, right?
Yes, I think that we could say it's not experimental. We could remove the experimental from the docs, perhaps. See if there's any bugs open for it. The action item is that we just maybe update the language to not be experimental.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable. Yeah, I think you said it was like James Snell that had initially had that objection. I think you said you talked to him and he was okay with removing that.
Yeah, he said it's an edge, like an edge case that requires the being able to handle a buffer in some of these edge cases, if I recall, and he'd be open to removing experimental since there's not too many bugs open for it, but we should just be cognizant of if we then have issues with people in Japan or China who are using complicated character encodings, because that's what the buffer's for. It's for non-English character sets. But Unicode works, so I'm not quite sure. It must just, I don't fully understand the problem. It has to do, I think, with character sets that are really rare, like some character encodings that are really rare. So.
Okay.
All right. And then, yeah, I mean, last but not least on the agenda was argument parsing. So, yeah, Ben, I'm sure you've got stuff on your mind there. Darcy, you mentioned in Slack that you also maybe had an update or something. Who wants to go first?
I'd be curious what the current status is of the, what's been proposed.
So, I mean, there's the PR that has approval, which is just like bringing over the community work that's happened on parsargs and the parsargs repo. Pretty much just with like community-driven consensus on a bunch of this stuff. So like that was how we landed on like strict mode. There was a few people arguing for it. Kind of maybe interesting in that the reason that, so first of all, I'm advocating that PR is that we land as experimental. So with like an openness to change the API surface. So like I don't think it has to be the final API surface at all. And I think if we find it clunky, or I want to say there continues to be room to extending it to, since there's some points of contention you've brought up, Darcy. But the other interesting thing I think is there's currently a vote happening with the TSC just to say where the parsargs method should live, which is why we can't land that PR yet. So can't decide between process and util for where we would put parsargs, and I don't care either way, personally.
Yeah.
But we're currently blocked on merging like an MVP because of that. Yeah.
Darcy just commented in the chat that apparently the vote happened.
Oh, what's the result?
Process seems to be the consensus.
I believe that's what was shown. Yeah, I could be wrong. It might be still in process actually, because I know that it's async. So, but there's quite a few votes in already.
I don't fully understand how these voting process works. Like, does it show us the tally?
No, I was wondering that too.
No, it's encrypted. It's encrypted. I think not encrypted, but it's obfuscated voting mechanism. I think. I could be wrong. They use that. Funny enough, they use MPX and GH. So
My assumption was the vote would be over once it was merged. Was my guess. But I don't know. Does anyone have strong opinions about that? Like, I understand the argument for process, since that's where process.argv is, but util is fine too, I think.
The best argument I heard was stuff in util is meant to be like at least shimmable in a browser. So because of that, process kind of seems to make sense to me. I mean, I guess you could have an argument parsing in a browser, but why? But yeah, I honestly don't have strong feelings either way.
I feel like for me, it makes sense for process just because, well, it depends on what ships. Like if it's a full-fledged argument parser, like, and there's a whole bunch of utility to it, it may be better in utils, but
yeah, like, I don't know. I feel like Mateo feels really strongly about not extending process anymore if possible, because I think, is it because whatever's in process ends up in the global scope or something? Is that what the main argument is? Which I didn't actually realize that.
it gets passed to the scope, right? Like it just like require.
Gotcha.
Does anybody know if there is a result from this? It's hard to tell.
No, I think I misspoke there. I think I don't know. Yeah.
The vote will close in 2 weeks at the latest. It looks like it's been open for 8 days. Okay.
Yeah, so we should have consensus soon.
Yeah.
So I don't know, where do we stand? Where do you stand, Darcy? Like, I feel like there's not much happening on the repo right now. I feel like the contributors, kind of for better or for worse, got to a point of consensus. I know it's not as simple as you were hoping. So, like,
yeah, I mean, like I'm open to. I don't want to stop progress. Like I know I wasn't able to contribute over the last several months, like probably six plus months. So I know there was a lot of discussion and like a lot of work that went into the implementation as it is now. So I don't want to like come in and voice a strong opinion against it. I think it is weird that we've gone towards strict by default and like requiring configuration. That's maybe why I would lean towards this being actually in util if we're talking about something that's going to error like without options by default, because I'm pretty sure it's strict is true is the default right now in the way that it's set up. Yeah, and the approach I've been taking with like the separate library that I've been sort of using as a way to sort of ideate and think about, the most minimal set is like, can we get away with like almost no options and like continue to pare back? And in fact, after having a conversation with Roy, like it might be even possible to remove the last few options that I've got in the minargs library there. So essentially what you'd be returning is like and Roy put this adequately, I think, is like a glorified split, which gives you extra information about, the parse and provides enough detail that you could essentially do unique things with it, right? Or at least with minargs, the way that I've got now, does have a argv array that has indices that help you map back to the original like array that you provided or process argv array. So I saw that as a comment in the parsargs discussion, and I thought that was really important, especially if we're talking about something that's going to be extensible. But yeah, like I don't want to be a blocker. Like if we want to keep going, it's an argument parser and core. Like I think everybody will celebrate. So I just don't think that in terms of any in terms of any like function that I've seen, like I being able to run it and have it do something by default without having to configure it, I feel like kind of like harms. It's like it's tough, I think, for like a newcomer to like use and not be tripping over their feet. I don't know. I don't think it's very accessible. It's more like a framework than a library, or like, I don't know. Like you sort of have to know exactly what keys and configuration to use before you can play with like the functionality. So
I think that's oh, am I muted? I think that's a fair critique. Like I don't like, I think just trying to, I also don't disagree with the direction that Parsargs went in either. Like I think it had a bunch of community input. People were pushing towards like a slightly more, I guess, explicit configuration. Is what it comes down to. And I like Minimus. Like I've certainly used Minimus to write CLIs where like I literally just run Minimus, give it process.argv, run Minimus, and then do stuff with whatever is pumped out from it, right? Also, having maintained Yargs for years and years and years, I know how just making assumptions can like actually ultimately be a pain in the neck. It's hard to make an assumption that's actually going to please all your users, like because like people are going to be like, oh no, double dash should be working like this, single dash should be working like this, positional should be working like this. So I think the reason I could be swayed a little bit towards being explicit, like with the options bag, was that I know how opinionated people are, and if we might just be in this world where we spend the next several years arguing what the default behavior should be of the no configuration version, right? So, but I think this is the problem of argument parsing in general. It's like, you need some hill to stand on. Like, this is why I kind of like, even though it's a little pedantic, like actually really like appealing to the POSIX, like the POSIX design when possible, because like then you can at least say, when there's a disagreement between two people and you can't decide which route to go down, let's go with this document that at least has existed forever and gives some guidance about how you should write Unix command line applications. So that was my 2 cents. I would say, I would argue not to add any more features onto parsargs if at all possible, and just do exactly what you're saying and add the parser position so we know exactly what point in the string the decision was made to parse that argument. And then if you want to build anything really complicated, you actually start looking at the AST and where it was in the string.
Yeah, so that's kind of like, as soon as I saw that and thought about that, I was like, well, isn't that the minimal set of information that if we parsed out, like, because when I keep thinking about this, it's like, at least I didn't want us to replace like the current ecosystem tooling, like the current tooling. I wanted us to have a standard like core piece that could be used by Yargs or Minimus or anybody else. And like, if we had somehow a way to find all the commonalities, or to introduce something that like gets you like 80% of the way there. And at least I've completely pared back on usage. Like like I believe that strictness is like a function of usage, and we don't know what you want, like, as a very like primitive function, like we don't know actually what you want to do unless we start to add all these layers of configuration, right? Like you have to add like types, you have to add like sort of defaults, you have to add, all aliases even. And that all becomes like a function of like we're basically writing your program into this one function. And versus like, can we get some like added information to like, I guess like argv, like in some way, like add value without like opening up Pandora's box to like the rest of the options. I don't know.
Yeah. Or maybe there's a compromise there, which is like I honestly do like the kind of extended functionality of parse args, but to your point, maybe we make a strong case to put it in util, and then maybe there is an underlying library which literally just parses the string and puts the positions that the parsing happened, and then you could use that directly, or you could use the thing that's been built on top of it. That might be a good compromise, because I mean, I think we're gonna have to rewrite some of the guts of parse args anyways to get that positional information, because we're not tracking it right now, right? That's not how the parsing works.
That feels like totally like a path forward for me, because like I feel like there's like the set of users that want to configure, I don't know, like there's the minimal set, and then there's like the extended use cases, etc. Like, I don't know. I just always thought that as soon as you get into usage and like throwing, then you get into like formatting of that messaging, right? Formatting, and that's like and validation as well, which can be like, takes you off into like a whole nother. It's like so much functionality that we have to include.
I agree, and I think we have to stand our ground on the experimental status of it. I think being like, this is experimental. Like, let's see how the community takes to it. But I actually really like this. I like the idea of the even more bare bones than we even initially suggested for parse args, the like positional parsing information. I think that could be really interesting. And then I think don't throw at the higher level thing, but this was a really good suggestion from Kevin, and we can keep getting Kevin engaged too. Because I think Kevin will be really excited to add that functionality in. So I don't know.
Yeah,
there's a good compromise here.
I even referenced like that issue and his comment in like minargs when I added it, like, so the argv array, like I said, like basically a citation to like this idea like came from him. And it radically like simplified, like I got rid of like known arguments. I got rid of like a bunch of other stuff, and I can potentially get rid of like everything at like, I don't know, positional value capturing, like, can be done if we tell you that this thing is a positional, or like the way that we're parsing it and giving you essentially an ASD, we're telling you the things that you can basically write your own parser on top of that information, right?
What's Ian, and what are you thinking, Ian? What are you thinking, Joe?
I guess I just sort of generally feel good about the fact that more people got involved and it sort of took a natural shape, I suppose, because I didn't really have a horse in the race, in terms of any of the details, really. I just wanted to help and build something. So, Ian?
Yeah, I'd have to think more about kind of the two. I mean, I do kind of like I was kind of in favor of as simple as possible initially, and that is one of the things with the current implementation. Again, with the strict mode and needing to like provide a bunch of options to use it, that I feel we got a little bit away from. But yeah, I don't have like a strong opinion at this point in time. I'd actually like to use the two of them a little bit more as well, to kind of get a little bit better of an idea from, actually trying to write like a CLI with the two of them, which I actually do have to do for the thing that I'm doing for OpenJS World. So maybe that'll be a good opportunity for me to get a little bit hands-on with both of them and form a stronger opinion at that point.
All right. Is anyone opposed to going forward with getting an experimental version merged and see how the tires meet the road with users, and with the understanding it might be a little rocky if we start to change our minds a little bit over the next year, or decide to go in a slightly different direction. It's like,
Yeah, no, I'm all for it. And I wonder too, let me just ask this as the group. Generally, I agree with what Ian said too, but if we wanted to, if we landed as experimental and people had differing opinions once, you know, it was maybe being used, do you think there'd be any problem in backing off a bit and going back towards minimal if that was what, you know, consensus was? I wouldn't think so, right? I mean, that's why it's experimental.
that's why we call it experimental. It might mean it would be worth, here's where I'm of two minds. It might mean we should put a runtime experimental warning in, just to make it like, really just make it clear it's a toy that might change a little bit.
Yeah.
So where that kind of stinks is it makes it hard to rate it makes it hard to rate a command line app people would actually use, because you're going to get a runtime warning every time you try to run your command line argument parser.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe that's okay. Like maybe some people who, I don't know, it means we won't really see real world applications probably using it.
Would we set like a time limit on that, Ben? Like, you know, just for a month or two, or how does that typically work?
We'd have to roll it out in a future release. We'd take out the runtime deprecation. It's just like it's relatively easy to do. I think you just wrap the method in a runtime deprecation, and then, sorry, I'm using the word deprecation. Experimental, runtime experimental.
Yeah.
But it does mean we could maybe land as experimental. Like it's very clear, like someone can't pick it up and not know it's experimental.
Yeah.
And maybe that gives us room to poke at it, see if people like it, but
yeah.
maybe we immediately start. Kevin, the parser position stuff is a really good suggestion that Kevin already made, and like maybe when we implement that, we start maybe it does start pushing us towards a slightly different design, right? So.
Yeah, I think that's a prudent kind of like cautious approach that I would imagine other collaborators would, you know, not be opposed to.
Yeah,
from my point of view, I worry a little bit about releasing something a little more full featured and then like paring that back. But I think on the other hand, if we don't kind of land this soon, I don't know. I don't want to like go back to the drawing board on this again, because I feel like that might never happen, you know?
I think the reason that the configuration is needed is partially because we're starting strict mode by default. Like if we said strict mode was false by default, I think it would, for some usage, you could just call the method directly on your arguments, and we could get back to. So you know what I mean? Like, it's not like, I don't know if we have to completely revisit the drawing board to get to a simpler design, really. And personally, I do like the idea that we can differentiate between Booleans and things that take values.
So is
like, that's useful. Like I would say, if we were going to go simple, I'd want to go the simplest possible, where it's literally just a parser that gives you positions, and no user would ever use it. They'd only ever use it to build their own command line argument parser, right? So parseargs becomes a reference implementation of how you would build on top of this parser.
Is what you're saying then, like maybe ship it as is with the experimental flag, and maybe the change that we make is like strict becomes not true by default, depending on the feedback we get.
I think that, and the idea that if when we do introduce this idea of like AST based parsing positions, we expose that as well. And then Darcy could potentially use that to underpin mini args. If you wanted to just use an AST based one, you can use that to build yargs. You can use that to build mini args, whatever. Parse args is a tiny little argument parser built on that reference implementation. I think that's what I'm arguing.
Okay, yeah, that seems like an okay plan to me. I am a little bit on the fence too on the runtime experimental warning. I would be in favor of making it more experimental, but then like you said, if you're if every time you use it, you get that warning in your terminal, like probably no one's going to actually build like a real thing with it.
I don't know. Maybe we don't have to, as long as, like, it sounds like we have a pretty good plan, which is we try to slice out the AST part from the parsargs part, and the AST part, maybe some people just use that. I don't know what the naming is, but to me, that makes it to seem less likely to me that I guess I'm saying maybe we don't need to do runtime experimental if the main change might be strict switches to false by default from true to default. That's not a massive change.
Yeah, I guess it's easier than going the other way too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I mean, this does seem like a reasonable plan to me then, I think. We're actually over time.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
And I have another meeting. So I gotta drop, which I think means that will end
Okay.
the meeting.
Does this plan sound okay to you, Darcy?
Yeah, I mean, like the strict by default and the like heavy need for configuration was like a problem. I think the thing that changed my mind for sure is just like the idea of like the index references, like the AST sort of portion of this. I think there's kind of like where I'm driving at with like minargs.
Okay, cool. Well, we'll work. Let's talk off, like, well, as much as to your ability, but let's get Kevin looped in and try to make that the next thing we start doing. So, all right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Sorry to go over.
Okay, yeah, let's continue the conversation on Slack.